Sweet and spicy with a caramel glaze, this blackberry jam cake did not disappoint. So lately I've been feeling a little nostalgic, and I've been thinking about some of the cakes and cookies and things that I've had throughout my childhood and things that my grandmothers made. And the other day I was at the library and I was looking through a cookbook, and it was all of these different vintage cakes. And I thought, that sounds like a really fun idea to try some different recipes that maybe I've never tried before. So the first cake in my series is going to be the blackberry jam cake. Now, I remember my grandma Audrey making something called jam cake, and I don't know, I remember her always putting it in this glass dome cake stand that she had on her counter, and it seemed like she always had some sort of sweetbread or cookies or something in that dish, just in case like a company came over or friends came over to visit. And I can remember her talking about jam cake. So I was really excited to try this recipe and see if I could duplicate her recipe. Now, my grandma and grandpa were from Kentucky, and that's also where my husband is from. And he remembers his mother making a blackberry jam cake also. Now, of course, they used real blackberries from not real, but fresh blackberries from their bushes that grew wild out on their farm, and it was really good. I had to use the jarred stuff, which wasn't quite as good. But after I made this recipe, he said that he remembered his mother's cake differently. So that was kind of interesting. I went online and looked up blackberry jam cake, and there are some different ways of making it. So I would say that this is probably an old-fashioned recipe, because the recipe that his mother made had more of like a cream cheese frosting, and that was the recipe that I found most often associated with Kentucky. So if I was going to describe this cake, I would say it's very spicy. I would even call it a spice cake, actually. There's just a hint of the blackberry in there. I used this jam, it was Smucker's Natural, because I thought it would be the closest to, like, if you made your own. And it was good, but it did have some seeds in it, which I didn't care for, and you could taste those in the cake. So I would recommend, if you can get your hands on some fresh preserves, like maybe at a farmer's market or something, that would probably taste really good in this cake. Otherwise, I would call it a spice cake. It's got cloves. It's supposed to have nutmeg. I did not have nutmeg, so I used pumpkin pie spice as like an alternative. I probably changed it just a little bit. It had cinnamon in it. It called for nuts, but I omitted the nuts, and then raisins, just a few raisins, but it could have maybe even used a few more raisins if you like those. So the recipe said that you could put it in 2 cake pans or in a bundt pan. So I don't make bundt cakes very often, but I had this cute heart-shaped bundt pan. And here I am putting in the batter, and it's getting up to the very tip top of the cake pan, and I'm thinking, I hope this doesn't overflow. So my recommendation would be, don't fill your pan quite as full as I did, because what happened was, as you can see, it overflowed, and I was worried that it wasn't going to turn out. I'm not a professional baker by any means, and a lot of my recipes go up in smoke, so to speak. But it's always fun to try new ones, and luckily this cake actually did come out pretty well. It overflowed, but I was still able to get it out of the pan easily, and buttering it was very important, so definitely make sure that you do that. Also, I used a dark coated pan, and I don't know if others know this, but if you use a dark pan, you need to reduce the heat by like 25 degrees so that your cake won't overcook or burn. Now the icing for this cake is really just a caramel. The recipe, I'm going to attach it to the description, but she said I think she heated it to like between 230 to 240 degrees. And so basically what it does is it's like a soft caramel that you drizzle on the top, and then it glazes the cake and it crystallizes. So it's kind of like an icing, a sugary, crunchy, little bit crunchy icing. She also recommends that you don't eat the cake until the next day because the flavors deepen and taste, it just tastes better. So if you don't have a candy thermometer, I just recommend, let this come to a boil, stir it a little bit. Don't let it sit on the heat for very long because you don't want it to be a hard cracked caramel. You want it to still be that soft caramely glaze that crystallizes just a little bit. So all in all, this was a good recipe. It was not the same recipe as my grandmother made. It was not the same recipe as Tony's mother made. It was a totally different one that we never tried. I would say it was interesting, and it's got a good flavor. It's a good spice cake. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but definitely worth trying, especially if you like those flavors of clove and ginger.